Okay, so welcome back to my channel. I am Jason, and this is from Sinn's Perspective Review. So this is going to be a recap of Wu Assassin episodes 4 and 5. So it starts with a flashback. It's 15 years in the past, and this is where we get the story of how the whole fire started. And so, okay, so Lou, Tommy, Jenny, and Kai, they break into the restaurant, and they're in the basement, and I guess they were looking for fireworks or something. Tommy was supposed to be the lookout. So Lou, and Kai, they're in the room and they're looking for the fireworks. Tommy's standing out there smoking a cigarette. Around this time, Six shows up, still wearing that bad wig, that lace front. Oh, that thing looks so terrible on him. And he goes in. There's supposed to be a closed meeting of, I guess, the head of the triad, and you can hear them like fighting over territory. So he basically went in and he killed everybody. And so she set the whole building on fire. And as he's walking out, um, Tommy had gone into the room, not thinking about the door. So when he went into the room, the door locked, so they weren't able to get out. So while the building was burning, they're now being overcome with smoke. And Kai is banging on the doors, screaming for help. And that's when he walks by like he's walking out of the building, but then he glances over and he sees Kai in this room. And so now he panics, and he put the fire out, and that's how the kids were able to survive. So there was this whole question of how were the kids able to get out of here. Six saw Kai, and he put the fire out, and that's how they were able to survive. So, but unfortunately, Lou did suffer some burns on his arm and his back. Um, so we see Uncle So now it picks up where it left off with Six and the bald chef Kai. They're now face to face. They get into a fight. It was a great fight scene. They're actually back at the restaurant, and CG she shows up at the restaurant because she's following up on the information from the cop. And so she goes in, and of course, Six goons are all over the place, and so she's having to fight her way through to get to this main hall, which is where Six and Kai are fighting. But of course, she doesn't know that. She's just there to get information. So she walks in on this fight. At this point, Kai he fought the good fight, but he got fucked up. He that was a little too advanced. Six was a little too advanced for him. So like I said, he fought the good fight, but okay. So this is where you see the prophecy, where the vision that Kai had of CG being killed by Six, and so Kai is semi-conscious. He flung him. He's just, I think he's gone through every table, every wall that was in that damn place. And so now he's basically semi-conscious. CG walks in. She has her gun on Six. Six is now about to set her ass on fire. Kai jumps in front of her, and he catches the brunt of it, and she's knocked back. So she eventually shoots. It was like a chandelier or something. It was a lot of glass, and so it came down, and it was able to basically slow Six down enough for her to get Kai out of there. The thing is, I guess Kai was too weak to keep up the facade, so Six now knows that the Wu assassin is Kai. Okay, so what happened? Okay, Jenny and Tommy. So of course they're having an argument. They're at the restaurant having an argument over the whole Tommy kidnapping the bald chefs from Chinatown, snatching motherfuckers off the street, and snatching up Jimmy. And so he's like, "Oh, Jimmy's fine," and I don't want to burn any bridges with the triad and the whole thing. And she's like, "This is crazy," and he was just like trying to brush it off like it wasn't a big deal. And so she's like, "You know what? Our parents are going to be here in 3 hours. I have to pick them up from the airport." And Tommy was basically like, "You know what? I'll pick them up from the airport. You can stay here and get stuff together." And she just really didn't want him to be involved. So he's like, "You know what? I'll just leave and I won't show up. Just tell him I'm out of town on business, because I just fuck everything up anyway, right?" And so he fucked up, and now he's trying to lay the guilt trip on her, right? Okay, so he storms out. And she's now sitting there left like, it's a lot. It's a lot. So Kai and CG Kai is now trying to get no, CG is trying to get Kai together, so they're at her place, and he's like cut up and beat up, and she's like, okay, she believes him now because she just experienced and saw what happened, and so she's trying to figure out what's going on. But of course, at this point, he's in no position to talk to her. He's all fucked up, and so but eventually, they were able to talk, and she's like, okay, I'm part of this now. She's gonna do what she can to help him, but then she told him about her being an undercover cop, and she's trying to get McCullen, and they just have to figure out what their next move is going to be. And so around this time, Lou calls her and tells her he needs her to come to work. And so she has to leave Kai. So Kai stays at her place while she go to see Lou and find out what's going on with him. Okay, so so of course so he goes to, they had some other conversation. He talked about the fire, and that's when she revealed to him that it was actually Six who started the fire at the restaurant. So all this time, the 4 kids always thought that he saw him as a hero, like he had saved them, but he was actually the cause of it. And so now Kai is now coming to, she told him that, and now he's kind of dealing with that whole situation. So she left to go to work. So Yin Yang, she's now talking to Kai, and she's explaining to him how, what happened to her, how she was the first Wu assassin, and what mistakes she made. And she's talking about how everyone that came after her also failed, and he's the last one. And basically, you can't fuck this up. You gotta get the shit right this time. We can't afford any more screw ups. You need to stay focused. And she basically told him that not everybody is going to make it, but it's for the greater good. So Jenny, she's picking her parents. She picked their parents up from the airport, and they head to the restaurant. Tommy is somewhere. He's playing, sulking, and playing the piano, and having this whole moment. So they get to the restaurant. Nice restaurant, nicely decorated restaurant, the renovations, all that. So they sit down. All of a sudden, her father starts with his shit. He's asking about, what is that plant over there? You got a fake plant? It's a rubber plant? And she was like, Daddy, that's not a rubber plant. It's an actual rubber plant. Like, it's not a fake plant. And so he's like talking about the decor, and she's just like, okay, you know what, Dad? I'm going to go and get some tea. You want something to drink? Just stay here. And the plant is fine. Stop staring at it. And she went to go get something to drink. So she comes back to the table, and he starts with his shit. Tommy eventually shows up, and because Tommy knew that they're just fucking assholes, their parents. And so he shows up, and first it's like, oh shit, is he gonna be high when he show up? Because you kind of got the feeling he was gonna just make an appearance, but I'm just like, oh shit, is he gonna show up high as fucking and just make shit worse? No, he came in, and his father pulled out some papers, and they're like, what is that? And he went online and pulled some reviews. There's like a handful of reviews about, people complaining about something in the restaurant, and he used that as I don't know what he was trying to make it seem like, because everybody wasn't satisfied with the restaurant, that somehow the restaurant isn't as successful, or he got upset because she made so many changes to the restaurant. He was like, when we leased this place from the other person, we made these changes, and our changes wasn't good enough. Like he didn't have any respect for what they were trying to do. There was no acknowledgement that, okay, whatever decor we had during our time here, it was what it was for the time, but we need the kids, they're young, they're modern, they're trying to get a different clientele in while trying to retain the old, loyal customers. And so you have to go and make changes. So it was almost like, and nothing she did was good enough, and he just shit all over it. And Tommy was basically like, when he first got there, he said, oh, let me guess, the plant, right? So he already knew. So the father's sitting there with his face all tight. And Tommy just basically, he didn't give a shit. He was like, you know what, she's done a great job with this place. And basically not everybody's going to be happy. He basically said what he had to say. And so, of course, his parents felt that he was being disrespectful. So they got up and walked out like, we're going back to the hotel. So they storm out, right? And so now Jenny and Tommy are sitting there, and he basically grabbed her hand, and he was like, I just couldn't leave you here to deal with them. So they basically shit all over you. You don't deserve that. You've done a great job. And it's just basically fucked up that they can't see that. And so she sat there and she burst into tears. Like, she was just so outdone, just upset, and it was just a fucked up situation. It just a fucked. I don't know. Just parents, it's like they never see you as adults, and so they feel like they should be able to say and do whatever they want, and that they have the right to do that. And that was just that was just fucked up, asshole. Um, so CG gets there and she realized, okay, so Lou and the Russians. So in the previous episode, they were trying to get so many cars of this make and model, and he's like, I'm gonna need 2 weeks. They only gave him a week, and so when they got there, he only had so many cars, and now they're kind of standing around. They having like as they had a stalemate because he's like, this is what it is. And so next thing you know, CG she sends Lou a text. And the text basically said, you need to, they're going to kill you. You need to get out of here. And so then we flash to Uncle Six. Uncle Six he's walking through some, I don't know, looked like it didn't look like a shipyard. I don't know where he was going, but he walked into the office. And this is when we finally meet McCullen. And they stand there and they shake hands. And Kai, at this point, Kai finds McCullen's files, and he calls her during this whole standoff. And she's like, I can't really talk right now, but he told her that McCullen is part of the prophecy. So he went to the restaurant and to get Jenny, and Tommy was there too. And he around this time, so Jenny is there, and no, that didn't happen yet. I'm getting something. So basically, so Kai, he calls and tells that that McCullen is part of the prophecy, and it flashes to Six and McCullen shaking hands, and basically how episode 4 ends. So episode 5 picks up where Lou is reading the text. So it picks up there, and so CG calls a distraction. And so that's when all hell breaks loose, gunfire, fights, and the whole thing. So she's, holding her own. She's getting her ass kicked, but she's holding her own. And in the end, all the Russians were dead. And so she basically said, after the whole thing, she said, we need to call Kai. She told Lou that she was an undercover cop, that she wasn't after him, that she's after McCullen, and that they need to call Kai. So so around this time, Kai went to the restaurant to show Jenny the photo of McCullen, like asking her if she knew him, and she was like, no, I don't know who that is. And so around this time, CG calls Kai and said that you need to come to Lou's body shop. So Jenny and Tommy were there, and he was like, you guys need to go with me. This involves you too. So they all leave. Okay, so Six and McCullen, so they're now sitting down to talk. So McCullen is basically Six is basically telling McCullen, you need to leave, and, Chinatown was mine, da-da-da. And so he does this whole thing with the fire, and McCullen was unmoved. He's like, oh, that was cute. Look at you. You got, little tricks up, look at a few tricks up your sleeve. That was too cute. Okay, that was nice. Little fire show. Okay, so, that was basically his attitude. And so you find out that McCullen, there's more to him than meets the eye. So Six basically sets his desk on fire, and McCullen, he waves his little hand, let's look at his wrist. He put the fire out, and so now Six is standing there like, okay, kind of confused, and so McCullen decides to tell his story, and McCullen. So you find out McCullen is old as shit. So he flashback to 1519 Scotland, and he was hunting. And that's when Ying Ying appeared to him. And at first, obviously, he thought she was a witch and a sprite or something. I don't know. He thought she was evil, so he was trying to kill her ass. But he eventually took the power, and she explained to him about how he was the Wu assassin, how he needs to defeat. The whole story basically the same thing she told Kai. And so he basically grabs his family up, his wife and his son, because he's trying to protect them. So, but unfortunately, the water Wu found him, and he wasn't as skilled as it was still, he had just gotten the power. He really didn't know how to use it. It was just, and he and his family, his wife and son ended up being killed. He ended up killing the water woo, but not before she killed his family. And so Ying Ying appeared, and she basically told him that he was telling her, repeating that she told him that not everyone was going to survive. It's not all of your loved ones was going to survive. This is him telling the story to Six. And so she basically said he needed to stay focused for the wood woo. And he was like, I want you to bring my wife back. And she explained to him, nobody has the power of resurrection. And he's like, I'm going to continue to fight. But basically, he threatened to say, after I finish fighting all the people I need to fight, I'm coming for you. And so he eventually ends up finding the wood woo, killing the wood woo. And she explained, Ying Ying told him the wood woo was going to be difficult to defeat because his powers, one of his powers, he has a healing property. So so he ends up killing the wood woo, and he thought that by getting the wood woo's power, he'd be able to bring his family back. So he slit his own throat. So he actually killed himself while holding the wood woo's talisman. I forget what they call them. And the power he had, because that's the only way that the power can be released, as if the person died, as the woo assassin dies. And so the power she initially gave him disappeared, and he absorbed the power of the wood woo. And so, but obviously he wasn't able to bring his family back because she already told him that there's no power, no one has resurrection abilities. And so he's still telling Six this whole story. So around this time, Kai, Lou, Tommy, and CG, they're at Lou's body shop, and he's explaining to them what's going on. Of course, they don't believe him, and then he was able to do something to kind of change his face. And Tommy jumped up like, what the fuck was that? And so they're, excuse me, all trying to make sense of, what's going on with that. And so, of course, it's jumping back and forth between McCullen and Six's conversation and what's going on with Tommy and the rest of them. And so Tommy and Jenny are talking, and they basically they now know that Six caused the fire, and they're just trying to come to terms with this, because all the time they thought he was a hero, but he was actually the cause of all their pain and suffering. So then you have Lou and Kai talking. They're off in an office talking, and of course Lou was pissed off because he got the worst of it. He's one that ended up with the scars all over his back and his arms, and he's like, and I can't believe that Six paid for my surgeries, and he really endeared himself on these people after what he did to them. And so it's a lot of confusion and a lot of upset and angry people. So it is what it is. And then he's also angry at CG, and he's like, do you trust her? And Kai said yes. He said, and Lou was basically like, I don't. He's like, do you trust me? And that's when CG walks in and is like, okay, we got 3 bodies down here we need to get rid of. And so basically they threw the keys to Tommy. You to bring their car up. So they could put the bodies in the car and get rid of the bodies. Okay, so Kai's taking Jenny home, and so of course they're trying to talk through the events of the night, and he basically wanted her to go back to Hong Kong with her parents, and she's like, no, I'm not going to go anywhere. This involves all of us. Once it involved you, it involved all of us. We're family, we're friends, they grew up together. It's like, I'm not leaving. And so Lou and CG are talking, so they went to Ari and Bob, who was Lou's guy, who can, I guess, get rid of things so you can get disposed of the bodies. And so they're sitting in the van, they're talking, and CG was like, this is crazy. I'm a cop. We don't dispose of bodies and cover up evidence. We catch bad guys. And Lou was like me. And she was like, yeah, like you. He's like, I'm not as bad as all. So they have this little heart to heart. It's like, it almost makes you think, okay, they going to end up getting together. Lou and CG. So they have a little heart to heart in the van, and looks like they understand each other, where each other's coming from. So okay, that's cool. Okay, so McCullen, like I said, is going back and forth. He's still talking to Six, and Force Six is like, that's ridiculous. Nobody can live that long. And at this point, McCullen's like 500 years old. You say, well, yeah, that's one of the ability. He said so. Six was like, so does that mean I'm immortal too? So you get to see that Six doesn't really understand this power either, and so there really hasn't been a story of how he even got the power. That hasn't come out yet, so he really doesn't understand it either. So he's asking McCollum, so does that mean I'm immortal too? And he said, no, unfortunately, this is an affliction that only the wood woo has, because of the healing properties. And he was like, had he known, he would not have done that, because one of the most painful things in his life was losing his wife and his son, and the fact that he absorbed that power, it just meant that he had to live longer without them. And so he talked about that, and he's basically saying that, but the Wu assassin poses a threat to all of us. And so you have McCullough, who has intimate knowledge of the Wu assassin and some of the inner workings. So, and then he starts educating him on the other. He said, so basically, McCullough was asking Six to join the rest of them, and he's like, the rest of us. He was like, yeah, there's 5 of us or 6 of us or something like that, and then we need to work together basically to get rid of this Wu assassin. And so, like I said, you're getting an understanding that he just has this power, and he's learned how to use it, but he really doesn't understanding. I don't believe where it came from, or at least it hasn't been explained to shown. It hasn't been explained to us, the audience, yet how he got this power, and of course, it hasn't been revealed the other Wu warriors. So, so Kai, he gets home and he knocks on Mr. Young's door. It's in the wee hours of the night, and Mr. Young's like, "What is going on?" And he said, "I just needed some. I need some groceries." He's like, "It's late. It can't wait till the morning." He's like, "No, it's some stuff that I need now." And so he's in Kai's kitchen. Kai's cooking up this concoction. I guess he's gonna. The whole point was to poison Six. And so Mr. Young was basically telling him a story about when he was in Vietnam, and one of the soldiers had taken some food from some woman in the village, and it later found out because he ended up getting really sick, and he was basically poisoned by this woman, and he died. He said, "You don't know what it's like to look in someone's eyes and see their life leave them." And Kai was basically like, it's something that he has to do. And so Mr. Young is like, "You've now made me an accessory." And Kai was like, "I know, I'm sorry about that." And Mr. Young was basically like, "You need to find another grocery store from now on." And he walks out. So it was like, oh man, Kai. Okay. So then we see the next day. Actually, so that, I don't know if it was later that evening or the next, I don't know. Jenny she goes back up to go to Fight Club, and she talks to some guy and said, you need to call Zam. He said, "You don't call her, she shows up whenever she wants." She said, "You call her, you tell her Jenny wants a rematch." So you see Zam leaving the restaurant, and she jumps in her car, and she's on her way wherever, and Kai is outside. So Kai goes in with whatever this concoction he made. He sat down, and Six is he's there going through some papers, and they sit down, and he basically Six basically says, "We need to talk," and that's how episode 5 ends. So I don't know what's gonna happen. I'm redoing the recaps as I watch them. So I don't know what's gonna happen in the next 2 episodes. But yeah, that's how this episode ended. I really like this show. I love the fight scenes. So we already seen the water woo. We've seen some of what the wood woo can do. We already know the fire woo warrior. So I think the other ones is metal. I can't remember. I can't remember the other 3, but it's gonna be interesting to see who these other people are and how they all are intertwined in the story. But yeah, I like the show, and I actually I do enjoy doing recaps on it. So, but I'm gonna end this here. It's 8:30. It's almost 9 o'clock. I'm gonna end this here, and I will talk to you guys later.